Hi, Zizaran here with another build guide, and this is going to be a Berserker Ground Slam. Ko came to me and said he really wanted to slam the entire screen and just have an easy build to play. So with that in mind, we came up with this. Now, I do want to have some warnings. This is not something we can fully test before the new patch, right? There's a lot of new things, like the auto exertion gem. So keep that in mind. Now, a really wonderful thing about it being a Marauder is that for anything in the bottom left of the tree, for both Marauder and Duelist, there are going to be so many alternative builds to try, and you can't really go wrong with melee. So this build looks really wonderful. It should be a super easy to build to play, where you want to play slams, but you don't want to press 6-5 Warcries every 8 seconds. And a lot of people are going to be dealing with that and doing like, okay, button, 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 slam every 8 seconds. If you don't want to deal with that, this looks like it's going to be the build for you. We've got it to do really good defense, really good tank, and the main unknown is going to be the mana cost of overexertions, and we have included some ways of dealing with that. If these builds help you have a good league start, please consider subscribing. It helps us out a lot. So if you like Ground Slam, check this out. So we are using Path of Building for this. If you're not familiar with it, we have a separate video that goes over Path of Building, shows how to use it, etc. It's a super important tool that we always use in Path of Exile. So make sure you have that. And then once you've imported it, you can see here that we have a normal step-by-step skill tree. So it's very easy to not get lost. Right? You can go through everything and it'll tell you where to put points at what levels. Ascendancy is included too in normal, cruel, and merciless lab. And then we have endgame clusters, and a new feature is loadouts. So this syncs up your skills, your items, and your tree, because before the tree and the items would not be connected, so you would always have clusters there if you had clusters, etc. So it is a little bit nicer now. So for the ascendancies, we do have Warbringer, we have Aspect of Carnage, Crave the Slaughter, and Rite of Ruin. And the Warbringer is particularly nice because it allows us to have Intimidating Cry up all the time. And if we move to skills, we can see here we are using auto exertions. So I'll explain a little bit of the unknown there. So it is reserving 15% of your mana per cry, but we don't know if it also costs the Warcry on top of the reservation. We're assuming that it does, similar to Spellslinger. So we have estimated it with being 150% multiplier to mana, which is what the current cry gem does. So that's what we're going with. If it is worse, then we have things in the notes for how to deal with mana issues. For example, dropping Balmage's Cry, using a mana potion, getting more minus mana cannot be crafted on an amulet. Like, we do have ways to deal with it, but yeah. It'd be great if that's not an issue. Other than that, here you can see this is like the endgame skill gems and stuff like that, so you have things to go for. A thing to mention, the 6th link does not exist yet in PoE. It's called overexertion. And we are simulating the damage here, and it is a large part of our damage, so it's a 15% and 60% more multiplier. We're underestimating how much it'll do, so it should be more than that most likely, but it is a lot of damage for this build. So a lot of these, when PoE is fully updated, should hopefully go away. But with super endgame gear, looking at around 10 million damage. We can look at some few other loadouts too. So we look at early game, you can also see that there are loads of different setups here. So for leveling, you have Ground Slam, super simple to level with. You just grab yourself a mace or an axe and you are slamming. And while Ground Slam is decent too, we do have Sunder at level 12. It's going to be super nice this league. And then here at 55 plus, the 4th thing for Sunder would be Overexertion. But either way, by putting everything into different skill sets, it's very easy to follow along what skills you should be using at roughly what level. And then you're not going to end up with like too many skill gems from the previous skill group. So that is really nice there. We can look at like the endgame for no cluster, and you can see here that in the endgame we're looking at weapons, which I do have guides on how to craft. There's a lot of different ways to craft these, both with fractured gear, fossils, etc. And a lot of the gear is here getting pretty decent in the end game. So this is sort of like mid to high level gear. A lot of resists and minus mana cost, etc. to help you deal with the mana. It is down to 9 here. Flats are very important. They are often underestimated by new players. They're very important. We really like the suffix of, or prefix, sorry, of flagellant, because you are getting hit very often on this build, so that'll just be building loads of flash charges. Then we have reduced shock effect, curse reduction, armor increase, and movement speed. And the life flash should be either instant, fully, or half. Either is fine. And jewels as well. These are triple jewels, but you know, either even just a 1-stat or 2-stat jewel, like damage and life or double damage, like both of those would be acceptable. Early on, it is basically going to be, you can use the recipe. It is a blacksmith whetstone, a rare rustic sash, or blue, but ideally rare, and a weapon will make up to 64% increased physical damage. Also, using like essences of contempt or alchemies on weapons early on, especially once you're like level 24 plus, is pretty decent. And remember, if you hit percentage physical damage or flat physical, you can use the crafting bench with an open prefix to craft the other. And you really do want both. Everything else, do remember that you can use the crafting bench on white gear. This is super important because that means you can focus more on socket pressure early, and it's very easy with just crafting on every piece of gear to get 50% all res, even 60% all res. So very easy to do that, and because of that, we do want to pick up a lot of unidentified rares and vendor them for transmutes. And if you look over the early game gear, you can see that we're not using uniques or anything like that. It is just going to be get as good a weapon as you can. And due to all the melee buffs, you can see how easy it is to get over 600 DPS. This used to be like, you know, 20 exalts back in the day or 10 exalts back in the day. But now, due to the quality buffs and because of just like it's so much easier now, yeah, very easy to get over 600. So this is flaring with a attack speed roll and then literally just crafted percentage physical damage, which is 1 exalted orb. So really, really nice for melee how easy it is to get good weapons. So this is literally alt regals or a little bit of chaos spam or some fossils or harvest reroll would be doable to make these. And then we do have like a very endgame version. Here you see that all the gear is starting to get fairly min-maxed. This is probably anywhere from like a 20 to 40 divine budget, depending on the economy, obviously, and market prices. We can't really know that beforehand. Still, triple stat jewels, we don't really ever account for quad stat jewels. And then the clusters are pretty okay to roll, especially the medium one. Echoes of Creation, the reason it's only in the super endgame one is this is a uber drop. So especially for hardcore, this is going to be quite tricky to get. Softcore, these two become available pretty hard. And once you have this, you can see the fourth line is when you attack, take 15% of life as physical damage for each Warcry starting the attack. So that's 60% of your life as physical damage taken. So this is why we want a lot of armor, a lot of phys mitigation to mitigate that. If not, you would kill yourself in 2 shots. And we don't want that. So you want to have the endurance charges up for this. And then, but we get skills deal 15% more damage for each Warcry exerting them. So that's like 60% more damage. So it's super nice. Very good helmet. Designed by Ben. I guess he knew this moment was coming a year or 2 after he designed it. But yeah, very good gear here. We always like making sure you have chase goals to go for when you do happen to come into some currency. And then there are different like budgets here. Now, as for at what point to use which set, it is literally what you can afford. It's going to depend on the economy. Like getting something like with life and 1 rest is very cheap, right? So we do just try to account for everything. There's no set like after 3 days you should be here. Now in the notes, Sai's done a beautiful write-up here with everything like questions. Mana cost of Warcry is too high. There are loads of solutions here. Being squishy early on. Why is there no life on the chest, etc. We try to account for everything. And we should be able to, both me and Sai, one of my team, will be in my chat very often. And we'll be able to help with solving parts of the build. So feel free to come to us, drop by the channel. And most things should be solvable. And worst case scenario, if something is unsolvable, very easy to pivot into other builds, right? Anything Marauder, anything Duelist this league, even if it looks experimental, very safe bet. And respeccing should be easier than ever because you can use gold on top of regrets to respec. So yeah, respeccing should be, if you want to be experimental, this is the league to do it. And we answer questions like why we don't use determination anymore, alternative skills that you can use if you don't like this one. So hopefully everything is accounted for, and this should be a really solid league starter, albeit a little bit experimental because of the mana cost that I addressed. We even have some crafting tips here, and I have a separate video for how to craft melee weapons. The The bandit for this is going to be Kraken. I think you'll see a lot of builds taking Kraken. 8% movement skill for one node is very nice. Oak is obviously good too. And honestly, all of them are good. There's very little wrong choice with bandits nowadays. If you're struggling hard for rest, 15% all rest for 1 point, very powerful. Major God is Brine King and the minor god is Ralakesh. And then we have examples of anoints and stuff like that. There are some good cheap ones now. Like, for example, you can take Hatchet Master early as an anoint, and then later you'll be able to take Tenacity. Another important thing to mention for this build is you will most likely, 95% chance, only want to keep your gems at level 1. The only thing that you gain by leveling them up is Warcry speed, which we are bypassing by auto exertion, and duration, which we also don't need. So the only thing that really goes up would be mana cost. So keep it at level 1. That's an easy thing to mess up. And I'm specifically just talking about these 4 Warcry gems. Obviously, your Ground Slam and the Auto Exertion gem itself, you do want to level up and everything else, but these 4 Warcries, you do want to keep at level 1, most likely, unless something changes. So, a good thing to talk about before you get a 6-link, and we do have it here in the notes, if you only have a 5-link, you drop Vulnerability and self-cast it. And if you're on a 4-link, manually cast Seismic Cry. Now, a really cool thing here is that with Battle Mage's Cry linked to Vulnerability, when you do have that 6-link, is that will basically be auto-casting Vulnerability for you. So, very nice, quite strong, but yeah, that is how we bypass that on a 4 or 5-link. Another thing that can be scary on this build is being squishy early on. That is actually a downside to this build, so a little bit scarier for hardcore, but Berserker is very scary on hardcore to begin with, right? We do have that increased damage taking. What you can do is you can move Seismic Cry out of the auto exertion setup, you drop your Herald of Purity entirely. This means that your Rallying Cry is not going to give you extra damage anymore either, but now you can run Determination and a little bit of armor early on, and this is particularly before we get to like our new endgame bases. So by the time you're in tier 16s and stuff like that, you should have that, especially in hardcore. You want to either buy that off other players or focus on farming that. But before you get like the new bases and get your armor up a decent amount, then Determination can be that little band-aid. But it has been nerfed so much that we generally don't want to keep using it. Thank you so much for watching this build guide. We hope it makes you have a great league start. Sub if you like the video, and remember that I will be live on both YouTube and Twitch for this upcoming league, so feel free to tune into either there. And either way, thank you so much. Try to die less than I do.